This video covers the story arcs planning features of novel goggles. Creating story arcs for your manuscript has the following advantages. It allows you to plan and visualize how the scenes in your story fit together. It allows you to plan and visualize how subplots diverge from the main story and merge back into it. It allows you to traverse the manuscript by stepping through scenes in a specific story arc using the traversal tools in the planning and writing contexts. Scenes in the linear structure view and in the manuscript margins in the writing view become color-coded to make it easier to see which scenes follow the same arc. Story arcs can be created and manipulated in the story arcs view in the planning context. This view shows a two-dimensional grid where you can create and visualize color-coded story arcs and then associate scenes with the arcs. Scenes in the story arc grid can be linked together to form a story arc order, which in turn will enable the story arc traversal order in the traversal tools, allowing you to traverse your manuscript according to story arcs. This makes it easier to quickly move through particular story arcs in the planning context or writing context while you are working on your story, making it easier to maintain continuity and find plot holes. Let's go to the story arcs view in the planning context now. This is the story arcs view in the planning context. Here, you will see the grid where story arcs are created and manipulated. The grid can be moved around by clicking and dragging within the grid, and it can be zoomed using the mouse scroll wheel. Creating a new story arc is as simple as right-clicking within one of the unshaded rows in the grid. This will open up the Create Story Arc pop-up, where you can specify a story arc title, summary, color, and grid row. Clicking the Create Story Arc button will create the arc and render it on the grid. Once a story arc has been created, the selected row will be shaded according to the selected color. To edit an existing story arc title, summary, color, or row, click on the appropriate darker shaded rectangle to the far left of the story arc grid. This will open up the story arc details pop-up, where you can adjust the parameters. Parameter updates will be saved as soon as you change them. Let's create a second story arc before we associate a few scenes. Once you have created a story arc, you can associate scenes with it by dragging them from the linear structure into the grid and dropping them into a story arc row. Scenes associated with a story arc will change color to match the row that they are dropped into. Note that you can actually drop scenes into any square on the grid, even outside of story arc rows. If you do this, the story arc color for the scene will be black. You can do this if you want to indicate scenes that transition between arcs without being strongly associated with any arc. In current versions of novel goggles, it is up to you to ensure that scenes are spaced such that scene detail overlays do not overlap. We plan to improve this in future releases. You can create story arc orders that branch and merge as you desire. A typical use case might be to maintain a primary story arc that follows your protagonist, a secondary story arc that follows your antagonist, and tertiary story arcs that follow any subplots that you may have for other events or characters. To link a scene to a story arc order, start by setting an active scene. You can do this by clicking on the circular scene indicator in the story arc grid, by clicking on the scene in the linear structure, or by using the traversal tools. Once a scene is active, its circular icon in the grid will pulse. Next, right-click on a scene that you want to add to the story arc order to follow the active scene. From the context menu, click Append as Next. This will append that scene to the list of next scenes for the active scene. You can link to scenes within the same story arc, other story arcs, or scenes dropped outside of story arcs. You can also have multiple next scenes from the same source scene, as well as having multiple source scenes lead into a single scene. This makes it possible to create story arcs that diverge or join, or to indicate transitional scenes that are not specifically on either arc. You can move a scene within the grid at any time. Simply click and drag on a scene in the grid and then drop it at the new location. Any lines linking that scene to other scenes will automatically reroute. You can also delete all next scenes for a specific scene. To do this, right-click on any scene and click Delete All Next Scenes. This will remove all links to next scenes. You can also remove a scene from the story arc grid entirely. To do this, right-click on any scene and click the Remove from Story Arc option. This will remove that scene from the story arc grid, and it will also unlink that scene from any story arc order that it belongs to. Clicking on a shaded story arc row will make a specific story arc order active. The active order will start with the leftmost scene in the clicked story arc row. Each next scene in the story arc order will get an overlay showing the scene details. This will follow the story arc order on all divergences and merges going forward from that initial scene, so that even scenes in other story arcs that are linked from scenes in the active story arc order will have their scene details displayed. Additionally, scenes that are linked into a story arc order will also display their story arc color in the linear structure view when a story arc order that links to them directly or indirectly is active. It is then easy to see which scenes form part of the story arc order by looking at the linear structure representation of the story plot. To traverse the manuscript by story arc order, select the story arc traversal option. Then, select the story arc that you wish to traverse. The story arc order will automatically be selected, and you can then traverse the scenes in the selected arc using the previous scene and next scene buttons. When a story arc branches to multiple next scenes or converges from multiple previous scenes, clicking the traversal button will replace it with a selection drop-down containing all of the possible scenes to choose from. Simply select the scene that you wish to traverse to from the list. Note that these traversal options are available in both the planning context and the writing context. Let's quickly go to the writing context to see how story arcs feature there. This is the writing context. Scenes that are associated with a story arc will have their title and date shaded in the color of the story arc. They will also have a small shaded bar against the left edge of the left margin, next to the scene title. Finally, as mentioned, the story arc traversal options are available here as well, making it easy to follow a specific story arc order. That is all for this video. To learn about other Novel Goggles features, see the other videos available on our YouTube channel.